What's going on, everybody? I want to talk to you today about mistakes I've made with high yield funds, mistakes I've seen other people make. And this isn't going to be like picking on anybody. I may be picking on myself. But besides that, going through this crash, correction, whatever you want to call it, and using hindsight to go back and look at mistakes, I think can really help myself and other people going forward. I want to talk about those mistakes today. This is Mike, the tactical stock scalper. All right, all right. I think one of the biggest mistakes I've seen people make with high yield funds, and this is really referring to the bull run we had last year, was not taking profits when things got above their cost basis. Now, this is one I'm not really guilty of because I started taking profits and I got lots of videos dating even back to last year in July where you can see me talking about taking profits. But I saw people just holding on to their positions and for whatever, I mean, we could use any of them, but Misty is a really good example because it really rocketed up a couple different times, and it got above people's cost basis. And I think in their mind, on the surface, they didn't want to pull anything or take any money off the table because they didn't want it interfering with their monthly distributions. However, I mean, on the surface, I get it, okay? But I think if you were to just think about it for a minute and pull enough shares, right? If you didn't want to sell the whole position, whatever, sell enough shares that when you pull that profit, that it's like 2, 3, 4 months worth of distributions. And then you can reallocate that money, whether you do it like I did and put it in a savings account or whatever, that pulls that money off the table. And you don't have to worry as much about what happens when the market reverses. So, number one, not taking profits with high yield funds. And I mean, I'll do it with anything. JetQ, SPY, if it starts getting above my cost basis, I'm going to pull dividends or whatever else to take money off the table. So, there's that. Number two, and I have some notes here, talking points, so I may look down from time to time. Using heavy margin during a run as we're getting stretched away from the mean, meaning for me that's the 200 EMA. Other people may say 200 SMA, doesn't matter. But once it gets stretched away from the mean, putting on more risk with margin. Now, I don't use margin, so this didn't affect me any. But seeing that happen, and people, and it wasn't just one person or two, I mean, it was a lot of people. And it wasn't just in high yield funds. I'm in different trading discords and this and that. So there's a lot of people that the greed affected them as the market was getting stretched. And all they could think about was how much they were going to make on their dividends, right? And it just kept piling on the risk as we're getting stretched from the mean. And that's super dangerous. And then when the market reverses, if you didn't take profits or pay off the margin or de-risk in some form or fashion, then you probably really felt that during this corrective measure that we're going through in the market. No risk management whatsoever. And I was kind of guilty of this. I mean, I got lucky that I bought in when I did. It wasn't some great investing tactics by me. When I got into high yield funds, it was literally the bottom of the 22-23 crash. And so I was fortunate that I got in at the bottom of the bull market and everything ripped, right? But I didn't use any risk management during that period. And anything could have happened. I mean, I didn't have any kind of deep stop losses in place, nothing. And so I got fortunate that that didn't turn around on me last year before I got out of most of my high yield positions before the crash came. So I think that's important to have some form of risk management as you are getting stretched and stretched and stretched. And then so this is going to go back to a couple things. Not taking profits, okay? Too heavy on margin, no risk management, and not ever thinking that the market could correct or crash. People last year thought that magical bull run we were on was going to last forever. I mean, you can say, oh, we know it's not going to last forever, but your actions dictated something different, okay? And luckily for me, again, I knew we were getting stretched, and I was getting nervous. And it had nothing to do with high yield funds. It didn't matter what I was in. I was getting nervous about how far away we were. Now, I was way early. Like in late July, I started taking profits and selling stuff, and I was like 6 months early before the correction, granted. But I was still nervous. And I knew that we would revert at some point to the mean. So understanding as it's going up, it's going to come back down. Now, on the flip side, as we're going down, this also it's getting stretched from the mean. How long can we go down? Who knows? But the more and more we get stretched away from the mean, meaning in my case, the 200 EMA on a daily time frame, we know it's going to get back up there. It's just a matter of when, not if. Okay, next. Buying based upon yield, okay, and not the underlying. I can't stress how important the underlyings are with Yieldmax and high yield funds. Guys, it's paramount. If the underlying is bad, let's take Myrna, for example. Myrna has been in like a 3-year downtrend since 2021. I think it was at $400. It's like trading at $25 now, right? It's a constant downtrend. If that you don't even have to know anything about technical analysis. All you have to do is pull up a chart. And if you see the underlying on a constant slope down, that should be a warning to not get in that high yield fund, because that's what's going to happen. You're going to catch all that downside. And if it's not giving you any upside, meaning the underlying at all, you know what's going to happen. So buying based upon yield, it can be dangerous if the underlying is not good. Keeping with the underlying. Buying because something is cheap. Myrna is another great example of this. Because Myrna is cheap doesn't mean it's good. Look at the underlying before you get into any high yield fund, okay? Not hedging, okay? And hedging can mean it varies. When the market started curling over, I saw a lot of people in high yield funds, no form of hedging. Hedging could be various. You could buy inverse funds. You could buy puts. You could de-risk hedge with cash, right? There's all kinds of ways to hedge. And to not hedge when a market starts rolling over is really super dangerous. And if you combine that with margin and over leveraging and you're not hedged, it's all downside from there. So it's extremely important once the market starts turning around and we start going back up to think of ways you can hedge when we go back through another crash. Another one I think is important, and where I messed up, honestly, in the beginning phases of my Yieldmax journey, was I didn't have any market-related funds. I was all into NVIDIA, AMZ, YMAG, SQI, Phoebe, a few other things. But I had no real YMAG. I wouldn't consider being a market-related fund. I wasn't into JebQ in the early days or SPY. And then when the market started getting stretched too far that I was worried about a correction, I wasn't going to buy those market-related funds at that point anyway, because I was more worried about de-risking than I was about adding risk, no matter what it was. So I think if I was to go back and do it all over again, I did pretty good on taking profits. I did pretty good at selling out of various Yieldmax funds when I felt they weren't going to work for me any longer. Um, and not having any kind of stop loss was probably a problem. I got lucky that nothing happened, and I didn't have any market related funds way back then in my high yield account when I started investing in these. Those are just mistakes I made and that other people have made. Please, I'm not picking on anybody, but I think it's important that we look at these mistakes. So when we look for the market to start going up again, we can do much better with them. This is Mike, Tactical Stock Scalper, out.